Hi, I mean, Mental Founder Charity Excellence. This fundraising strategy made simple video is the first in our Get Yourself Fundraising Fit series. And what is strategy? It is about quality of thinking and clarity of thought. The Steeple, SWOTs, all other stuff people talk about, that is simply there to provide a structure and support you in doing that. Strategy is not what you put in your strategic plan. Strategy is what an organization does. And the single biggest failing in charity strategy is in implementation. The plan goes on the shelf and it gathers dust. At the end, I will walk you through how to make sure that your strategy is successful, because if you fail at implementation, all the other stuff's been a waste of time. The toolkit is downloadable from the Income Questionnaire and Charity Excellence. It will give you everything I'm going to cover, step by step, very simple and practical, far more, and a whole suite of additional tools that you can use or not use as you see fit. You just pick it up and use it. So, how to create your strategy. Commercial companies exist to make money. We don't. It's about impact. Any kind of any charity strategy that is not ultimately aimed at delivering impact is not an effective strategy. So the starting point is, what is the need? What makes you special? And have you considered collaboration? And then we look at the outside world, because that's the stuff that's happening. That's the stuff that will stomp all over you. Stakeholders. Communication is the foundation of a fundraising strategy. To get your donors, you first have to find them, and then you have to engage them. If you don't do that, it will not succeed. So this really matters. And Steeple is about how you look at the outside world to identify those things that are really critical to you. And then we move on to creating your strategy. SWOT effectively takes the outside world and your internal strengths and puts them together in a way that enables you to succeed. That's strategic direction. And then I move on how you make it work, because that's where the vast majority of charities fail. So what is impact? It's the difference that you make to people's lives, or the dogs or the cats, whoever, but ultimately the people, because we're talking fundraising here. What is the unmet need? Lots of people will write, this is really important, we have to do this. No, you have to make the case to the funder. You have to show the funder that you are genuinely delivering on stuff that really matters to them. So what is that need? How many people, dogs, or whatever? And how urgent is it? Because if it isn't urgent, you probably won't get funded. And people say, oh, yeah, we do all that. Based on what? When the funder reads it, how will that person know that this is all correct? You can use the Funding Finder database, the Data Finder database, and it will find loads of stuff. You can just Google it, but you need to be able to be really clear. You cannot plan what you're doing as a charity if you don't know this, and you cannot convince your funders if you cannot give them this kind of argument and information. This is the kind of stuff that you need for your funding bids. But it's the unmet need that really matters. So who else is meeting that need? Where? What are they delivering? Where is the space where the need is greatest? So what is the unmet need and how are you meeting that? This is your fundraising argument. There is huge competition for funds. So if you're just doing the same and it's not that important and other people are covering it and it's not particularly urgent, you are going to really struggle. So you need to find how, where, when, what is it that we do that delivers maximum charitable impact? Where are the facts and figures to support that? And that's what will convince our funders. And why are you best placed to respond to that? Your unique selling points, the buzzword for it. Lots of little charities say to me, oh, well, we don't really do anything. We're just a bunch of folks that get together. Actually, often small charities are really powerful. You can be very agile. You're incredibly low cost. You can go on to the estate. The people on the estate will know that Mrs. Singh, 3 doors down, lost her husband last year, is disabled and is struggling. They know that she knows helps. The local social services and the big charities will not know that. And even if they did, if they go around and knock on her door, she may well not trust them anyway. But they trust you. So you can do things that no one else can. And collaboration. The sector talks a huge amount about collaboration. If you say to people, would you like to collaborate? They always say yes. Often they don't really mean it. So be aware of bid candy, particularly if you're one of the marginalised groups like the LGBTIQ plus community and the BAME community. There are people who want you on their bid, and basically you're just ticking a box for them. They're not particularly interested in you being a partner. And poison chalices. Generally, that is the public sector. They can come to you with a great big contract. It looks absolutely fabulous. And then you wake up a year later, you find that it's 60% of your income. You can't afford to lose the contract because you would go bankrupt. And they just cut into the contract again and again and again. And effectively, you're just the lowest possible cost delivery for the local authority at that point. But it is a huge missed opportunity. With little funding, far greater collaboration could really, really help the sector. Just keep your eyes wide open. And how do you collaborate? Well, what you do, what is it that you do really well that no one else can? Where can you really add value? And what could you offer that's really valuable, but actually you don't mind giving it to other people? It's okay. It doesn't cost you in time or money. And what can they give you in return that's really valuable and doesn't cost them much? So you may provide someone access to a community because they really need that access. They want to reach those marginalised people, but they can't. You've got something that's really valuable to them. For them, a few £1,000s might be spare change in the till. You know, for people like the NHS, the kind of sums of money we talk about are chicken feed. Can you find a fit? Can you find a match? It's a lot easier said than done, but this is a big missed opportunity for us. And if you're doing this and you're really leveraging it and you're delivering more and more and more benefit to your beneficiaries and you're doing it in collaboration, that will make your strategy work much better. It will give your fundraisers a lot more ammunition to speak to your funders about. But strategy isn't about what you want to do. Theory of change says we need to identify the change in society we want, and then we go out and make that change. The outside world stomps all over everyone. COVID stomped the government into oblivion. The £1 billion funding cuts that we identified in our report in September 23 are stomping all over the charity sector, and people are going out of business. What we're doing with strategy is we're looking out into the outside world and going, where are the threats? Where are the risks? Where are the opportunities? And we're finding a niche that plays to us, and we're getting into that niche, and we're then delivering on that niche. But we're not going to change the world. China has got major economic problems. If the Chinese government, who control the entire place, can't change that, nobody can. So it's about how well you respond to what the outside world is going to do to you. And to do that, you need to understand the outside world. So that bedrock I talked about, who are our donors? Are they engaged with us? That's fundamental to your fundraising. But if you communicate with absolutely everyone, you are not communicating with anyone. People want different things. They're in different places. There are different things they could do for you. You can't just blast at full volume. So the question is, who really matter? What are you going to do about it? You're building your foundations. This is what's known as a stakeholder analysis. Across the top are influence. They increasingly have power or influence or things that are really valuable to you. Up the side is interest, how engaged they are with you. So in the top right are those stakeholders that really are important to you and who are really interested in what you're doing. These are the people that you really, really need to look after. Your main funder, staff and volunteers. You move to the top left, They're really interested in what you're doing. These are great supporters, but they really haven't got much in the way of influence or power. Often service users, local residents, people like that. Bottom right, potentially have huge influence over you, but frankly, I'm not bothered about you, or they don't know about you, whatever. And you want to engage those people. You want to move them up to become really interested in what you're doing. And the bottom left is actually they've got no real influence or power. They're not going to do much for you, and they're not interested in you either. Right, fine. So you keep them informed, but this is not a group that you're going to put a lot of time and effort into. Something I do on top of that is where we had the individuals who were really engaged and really happy with us, that we had a very good relationship, we put the smiley faces. They liked us. Where we had issues, we put the crosses. And look at that, we had a double cross in one of our managed closely because we had a big problem. And then you think about, how am I going to use this? So what we had in the top left were our service users, and we used to throw loads of stuff at them and communicate and board minutes, all lovely, lovely, lovely stuff. And I said to the chair, tell me what decisions that have come before the board that the service users have influenced or changed the board's decision. And he couldn't give me one. And I said, so they don't really have any power, do they? You just talk at them. Didn't go down well, never mind. But it was like, actually, yes. We need to give them agency. We need them to have a genuine say in the decisions that we make. So that's what that happens about. Down the bottom, with the business community and the philanthropists. Huge opportunity for us. But they weren't really bothered about us. So clearly engaging these guys, moving them up into managed closely was important. And so you're beginning to see the emergence of who and what and where we need people to move to get where we want to be. So telling your story. I'm on the autism spectrum. I'm awful at it, but it is really, really important. Lots of charities blast stuff out left, right, and centre. I went to one charity, we're going to fundraise on social media. Can you help us with that? And when I went in and I analysed all the audience, etc., they were all charities and refugees. None of them had any money. They weren't talking to the people to fundraise from, which is why they weren't being at all successful. I went, in another one, I sat in an executive meeting and we had millions of impressions. We'd had a big event in New York, blah, 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 blah. Everybody was really happy. And I said, what was the point of the event? What we were trying to achieve? And the chief executive said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, how do you know you've done it well? Apparently that was negative, but it's true. So the first thing you're going to get absolutely clear in your communications is, what is it you are trying to achieve? It could be you want them to donate. Well, they're not going to do that unless you're talking to the right people and they're engaged. You might want to influence them. You might be a campaigning charity. You might want them to volunteer for you. You might want to give them information that's useful to them. You might want to engage them. You want them to become interested in you because you're beginning to move them down the line towards becoming an active donor. And who are you speaking to? It could be a section of the public, local teenagers, local residents, people with autism in the UK. Is it your supporters? Because they've got a different attitude and needs. Is it your beneficiaries? That can be very different again. Is it the politicians you're trying to reach? Is it others? Is it the local business community? Is it high net worth funders in the local area? I mean, who is it? Who are you trying to reach? Because that actually really matters. You will only get people to change or act or do something if they are engaged with you and they believe in what you're doing. So when you talk to them, what you want is not the point. It's what's important to them, because if you don't talk to them about what's important to them, they will not respond. And how are you going to engage them? So really old people like me are on Facebook. Youngsters are on things like Snapchat and Insta. When we were recruiting volunteers for our care homes, we put posters up in the local post office. Every Thursday morning, people came in to collect a pension. It worked really well. So what do you need? Where are you going to go to engage them? Is it social? If it's social, what is it? Are you going to have talks with local businesses? Are you posters? Are you going networking? Whatever. And how are you going to grow your audience? Often charities are quite small. On social media, I had things like champions. We wanted to go onto Insta, being incredibly old, it's not my thing at all, but we were great on culture and stuff like that. And so I went out and I found a group of people who were our supporters, who were very positive about us, but actually were really quite active and well known. And I got them all to join our social media. Would you please like it? Would you comment? Would you share it? Would you just push it out there? And the Instagram sign up rocketed because of what they were doing. Didn't cost anything. It didn't take them very much time. At social media groups, I open my garden for the local church. And what I do each year for the people doing in the village is I drop it into the Facebook groups. Aylesbury, Horticultural Society, Wendover, Aston Clinton group, all that kind of stuff. I can reach about 30,000 people in about 20 minutes. It's really easy. So how are you going to grow your audience? And ultimately the key thing, and it ties back right up to the top again. What's your call to action? CTA. Do you want them to like? Do you want them to share it? Do you want them to donate? Do you want them to find out more? Do you want them to get in contact? Do you want them to click the link? What is it you want them to do? What is it you're getting out of this? And is that what your post says? So this is how you just walk through it. It's just logical. You can turn it into a plan, you can do the analysis, you can do all that stuff. You will find downloadable templates in Charity Excellence that allow you to do all of this. Very simple. But you do need to think your way through it. And what you're doing is you're building that foundation for your fundraising strategy. You are reaching your donors and you're beginning to engage them. So we now look out into the outside world. It's called PESTLE, it's called Steeple, it's called PEST if you're really old like me. There are actually probably at least a dozen different kinds. This is nothing more than a structure to capture your thinking. So you don't have to fill them all in. You don't need a big debate about which one fits in which box. Don't worry about that. It's about capturing the key factors. And what Steeple does, sociological, things to do with society, the way people think, they behave, they act, their views, technological, digital fundraising, AI, the impact of things on people's lives, all of that kind of thing. Economics drives fundraising. There will be no improved fundraising until the economy recovers. Where do we stand on that? What about inflation rates? Inflation's hitting the poorest far, far harder than anyone else. What about wage increases? The increase in mortgage rates potentially pushing increasing numbers of people into poverty, or the fact that they've frozen the tax relief. Do these matter to you? Ethics. Who you work with. Do you work with people where there may be questions about the ethics around it or whether you should be? What do you do about that? Are you an ethical charity? We've had horrendous scandals, abuse of women and God knows what else. And trust the charity sector, why would you do that? So where are you on the ethics? Politics. This year, absolutely, is going to be a general election. Is it going to be Labour or is it going to be the Conservatives? If it is, what are they going to do? Are we looking at a desperate lurch to the right? Or is Rishi Sunak going to storm back, massively successfully reignite the economy, get inflation down, and it'll all be absolutely fabulous? Well, it will be if you listen to him. And what about Keir Starmer? Will he suddenly engage people and bring back more caring politics? Will he craft his policies? Will the Green Deal get reinstituted and suddenly make a big difference to your environmental charity? Or will we flip back to the spend everything ideas? Nobody knows. But which way that goes will have a massive impact on the charity sector. Legal issues. AI has got lots of legal issues and things to think about, but changes in policy, what they might do about the rivers and the pollution, what they might do about any other area of law, employment. So if the Conservatives come in and they suddenly decide that they're going to really, really tighten up employment law because they're going to boost the economy by stripping away workers' rights, what does that mean for your charity? And you're just capturing it. You do not need to fill all the boxes in. It doesn't really matter which boxes in. What matters is at the end, you can look at this and you go, I can see the critical issues in the outside world that matter to us. And if it's all in one box, it's fine. And this could be global. The Chinese economy's going west, Donald Trump takes over in the US, that will have a major impact. It could be global, it could be UK. What's the outcome of the election? It could be regional, up north. HS2 has fundamental long-term challenge changes that will impact on people who live north of Birmingham. Or it could be really, really local. The new head of the council is someone who's really supportive of your particular activity, or they're going to create a new funding round or end the funding round, or they're going to build a new community sports complex. And this is a huge opportunity for you. You need to be looking outside, and you need to keep looking outside. You can't just shut it down once you've done your plan. I use news aggregators, but that can just be about signing up to newsletters, anything like that, as long as someone is just staying on top of what's happening out there. So you now understand what are the key things that may well happen in the outside world that will impact on us. So what does the future hold? Answer, nobody's got any idea. And there is huge competition for fundraising. It's the worst I've ever seen. Our report in September 23, where we used our data to analyse where we were heading, the government has cut £1 billion. Yeah, that's the big people operating in things like NHS and education. It's actually about the little local authority grants. Those are non-statutory. That means the first up on the chopping block. The councils are in serious trouble. Is it going to get better or not? The mortgage increases. Not everyone's felt them yet. But we've had some good news on inflation. Where's that going to go? And the very large charities, Cancer Research, Marie Curie, have both said we haven't got enough money. I disagree with them, and that they are going to invest and aim to significantly increase their funding. Our forward projections on resilience is we don't see funding recovery until the economy does. We don't really see anything until 2025. So if they want a big chunk of extra funding this year, it's going to come from somebody else because there isn't any more. What about the impact of AI? What about other tech? That will matter. AI is fundamentally a game changer for the charity sector. It could be hugely beneficial if we do it well. There are also big risks around things like misinformation and scams and discrimination. We don't expect full sector recovery until at least 2025. So what might that look like? The cost of living crisis has massively ramped demand on people like food banks, poverty advice, animal rescues, unloading all the pets from COVID. That sector is in serious financial distress. Government cuts, hitting things like contracts. Where are the contracts? Health and social care, education, justice. Justice is hard graft because it's hard to fundraise in justice. And the impact will be felt through into 2024 as the annual ones come round. They will impact all of us. If the councils are shoveling away all their little local grants, the little charity down the road doing good stuff for the kids in the mosque is going to get hit as well. And they are being hit right now. So that is going to cause more problems. And even if you're not one of them, everyone who's being cut is going to be working really hard to upgrade the fundraising. Fundraising is going to get more competitive for everyone. At large charity, what we would call digital moats, is where the super large charities like the Cancer Researchers use things like AI to really ramp up their fundraising, and they take fundraising share from other people, and suddenly the middle of the charity sector is beginning to get crushed. The little local charity working in the mosque or the church, you rattle a tin outside Tesco's, people will always give you £1. Less so you get very close. In the middle ground, it may be a lot more challenging. Economic outlook, it ain't great. It's not great at the moment. Legacies are okay, and retail's likely to be healthy because when everybody's poor, they go to charity shops. So retail's one of the few that goes up. And the sheer uncertainty. Election year, when are they going to call it? Who's going to get elected? How is the world going to respond to that? Will Ukraine go left? What about Gaza? China's economy's in trouble. American elections. There is huge level of uncertainty out there. We do not know what the end of this year will look like. It could be fabulous. It can all suddenly bounce back. It could be absolutely horrendous. If we move into a third crisis, then very large numbers of charities are likely to go under. And grant makers, are they actually going to move? Grant making doesn't work. And increasingly, people are going down there, lack of core funding and all this kind of vast levels of administration. They could change that if they wanted to. Will they? I don't think so. But that's one way that we could improve the situation with the limited funding we have. So there are loads of different types of fundraising. They all work in the right way, with the right donors, done well. So different kinds of funding. Some are unrestricted, some aren't. Some will bring you in little amounts of money, raffles. Some will bring you in very large amounts of money. High net worth donors or big trust bids. Bigger risk, but bigger money. There are different kinds of donors. Investment can be different. You may need to spend a lot of money or time. Google Ads, if you're a registered charity, is an absolute gift, but there's a lot of time investment in making that work, and you need different skills. You can't just launch a high net worth campaign, snap your fingers, and expect all the money to come rolling in. You need a particular skill set, a particular ability to reach those donors. So, which ones are going to work for you? Internal. What is your cause? Public-facing appeals, like the pussycats and donkey sanctuaries and things, work really well on things like Google Ads and tin raffling. If you're in criminal justice, life's a lot tougher. What particular skills do you need? How quickly do you need it? Because growing your regular giving, nobody ever does it because it only pays you back in the long term, so nobody ever gets round to it. But in actual fact, it's an incredibly great way to do it. Legacy fundraising is one of the cheapest forms, but it takes an awful long time to get there. Mounting a high net worth program is fine, but you're going to need specific skills and you're probably going to need to spend money and it will take you time. So how quick do you need it? How much do you need? There's no point organizing a raffle if you need 100,000, unless you're one of the big posh ones. And what resources do you have? Look inside. Where's the capacity? Where are the skills? Have you got connections? Have you got networks? What is it you've got that's useful and valuable and will help you? And then you look at the outside world. What donors are out there? Where are they? How engaged are they? I went and sat with a very large charity. They were running loads of events and they were doing trust fundraising and they wanted a bit of advice. And I said, did you know you're in the second most expensive postcode in the country, Gerrard's Cross? And they went, really? I went, yeah. I Googled it last night. You've got 6 A-listers own homes within half a mile of where we're sitting right now. Have you ever tried to reach any of them? And the answer was, oh my God, they hadn't looked. What's important to your donors that resonates with you and all the other things you've found. And strategy is about internal, external. If you can make it fit really well, you've got a big result. Bringing it together. So how do we now create our strategy? Take me a long time to get there. That's about quality and clarity of thinking. So strategic direction. People say, this is your strategy. No, it tells you where you might be heading. People can get really excited about filling the boxes in and what goes in here. Whether something is an opportunity or a threat often depends on what you do about it. So I don't particularly care what box you put it in. I really care that you get the ones that matter. So strengths and weaknesses are inside your organization. It's resources, it's people, it's skills. Opportunities and threats are outside. It's the economy, it's changes to the law, it's all that kind of thing. Okay? And so we fill in strengths and weaknesses. Strengths, everybody's always really good at that. Weaknesses are very difficult because people get defensive very, very quickly. We have got passionate staff. Oh, right. So they don't do the boring stuff like finance and contracts, which is why you're up the swanning. You need to be honest about weaknesses. And I usually frame it as what is it that we could do better that would really, really help us. So it's about doing more. It's not about poking someone in the chest and say, actually, the quality of your fundraising events are crap. It's about being constructive about it, always being constructive about it. So what is it that is holding us back? Lack of expertise, lack of capacity. We haven't got a pipeline or communications. We haven't gone through and done all that. Where are the weaknesses? And it's about being honest, but not chest poking. This is about constructive conversations. We can't change last week. We can change next week. What could we do that will make next week better? And framing the conversations forward around problem solving instead of identifying individuals and what they've done as problems. So we then move on to the opportunities. Surgeon volunteering, donor focus on the vulnerable, which is likely to remain. I put charity excellence framework in there, of course I have. But what are those opportunities potentially out there for you? And just throw them all down. And what about the threats? What's going to stomp all over you? Government funding cuts, increasing demand driven by continued inflation, etc. And you've captured them all. Doesn't matter where, but you've got all of the key things that you would need, and have a sense check and just go through and read them. Does this really matter to my fundraising strategy? No. Okay, take it out. Is there anything that does really matter that isn't in here? Oh, yeah, there is. Okay, put it in. And then you're happy. And this is where the debate conversation is. I go beyond that. Being on the autism spectrum, I over-engineer everything. So what I generally do is urgent and important are totally different. Getting fundraising money for the event next week is urgent. Getting your strategy right is important. So what I will often do is I will highlight the key factors, and I will highlight them either because they're important to us or because they're urgent. Because the way that you deal with urgent and important may be different. And then I've got a picture, and you can just look at that and go, this is us, this is the outside world, and these are all the things that really matter. And we know exactly where we stand, and we are now ready to create a strategy. So you use your strengths to mitigate internal weaknesses. We know we've got known weakness, this will help deal with that. That's fine. Or use your strengths to exploit opportunities. So we really ramped up our Insta and everything. We had fantastic digital. We had a huge number of stakeholders were online. Great. That's another one. Or strengths and opportunities to avoid or offset the threat. Or all four. Does that mean the one with all four is better than the other ones? Not necessarily. And this is basically you sit and have a conversation and go strategically, what are the options open to us? We could do this, we could do that, we could do that. Each one will have pros and cons. You kick it around the table and you come up and you go, we've got it. This is the best way for us to head. So, how long is your strategy for? I mean, I've done strategies out to 20 years. If you're building major projects and it's infrastructure projects, then 20 years is the kind of timescale that you need to look at. And most strategies would be 3 to 5. And to be honest, we live in a world that is so uncertain that can you realistically focus out to year 5? And probably not in most cases. Most people seem to go on 3. And first, the question is, and people are often really, really, really surprised when I ask that, is how much do you need to raise each year? Because fundraising strategy's job is to deliver the funding and the long-term sustainability for your charity. And if you're not doing that, it's not strategy. And once you've got that, what do you need to achieve in those years to do that? And what you're going to do that will deliver that? How are you going to manage the risks? So the risk is the high net worth thing doesn't really quite work. What would you do if you can? Contingency planning. So this can be really complex. for big organizations, but it doesn't have to be. So people say, well, I can't do I can't do a forecast of what we need in the future. We don't know. And I go, well, actually, you know what your budget last year was. If your budget is 50,000 a year, you go 50,000, 50,000, 50,000. And I would go, okay, have you got any major plans about what you're going to do? They always do. Well, we plan to do this in year 2. Okay, how much will that cost? Well, about 20K probably. All right, 50,000, 70,000, 70,000. Have you got multi-year grant funding? Oh, yeah. When does that end? Well, it ends at the end of year 2. All right. So you're going to need to replace it. So your fundraising target changes because you're going to need to find new income. Well, how much is it? Well, it's a hell of a lot. Okay, so you're going to need to have a funding plan in place by year 3 that is raising substantial amounts of money. That's okay because you've got 2 years to put it in place. And part of your strategy is about how you would put that in place. So your year 3 strategy is to bring in this amount of money. We will need to have achieved targets for this and this and this, and we will need to have brought in a new fundraising area that will expand this or whatever that will bring in this extra money. Okay, well, what will you have to do by year 2? Well, in year 2, we'll need to have done this, this, and this, and we'll need to be so far down the road on this other thing because we need it to be working by year 3. Okay, what do you need to do about year 1? Well, obviously, with that new fundraising thing, we're going to need to do this. Year 1's now. It's your budget. Can you see how it works? You just walk yourself back. So, year 1's this year. And it's exactly the same as strategic objectives. Strategic objectives year 1 is this year. It's just kind of urgent. So you need to get on with it. So your budget, how much do you need? When do you need it? Your operation, business, plan, objectives, whatever you want to call them. What will you need to achieve this year? When will you need to have done that? And your risk plan. What are the risks and how will you manage them? And I will warn you about risk. It's the carpet. Everything gets swept under. So we've got a gap in the fundraising. The trustees want to raise all this money. So what we'll do is we'll call it stretch targets and we'll just up your target. Not going to increase your budget, but we'll up the target. What you've actually done is just pumped a whole load of risk into the risk plan, but people tend not to see that. And I will come back to questions like, have we got the capacity? Have we got the funders? Are there enough trust funders out there to allow us to submit the numbers of bids we need to bring that money in? Is the trust fundraiser that we've got actually got the capacity to be able to write those bids? Well, no. Okay. So you're setting a target we can't achieve then. So you need to be thinking through that and you need to be very practical about it. And the contingency plan. What if? What if that big bid doesn't come in? So you're going to put in another Reaching Communities lottery bid for year 3. Okay. What if it doesn't come in? Oh, well, we haven't got a plan B. Okay. You're going to shut the service down, are you? Oh, no, we can't do that. Okay. So what are we going to do? And we just keep having these conversations until we're all in the same place and we're all clear about it and we're all comfortable that what we have is practical and workable. And this is my little acid test. Your estimates of income are realistic. Our big data shows that this is a major failing in charities, and it has been a major failing since I launched the system 6 years ago. What happens is the board decide they want to do a new project, and they slam £100,000 into the forward budget, and there is nothing to underpin it. Or something falls down, or they forget the fund is going to fail. You absolutely must be able to be confident that you've got a reasonable expectation of money coming in. You've got sufficient donors. We're going to submit 10 more bids and expect 2 of them to come in. Fine. Have you got a prospect list with that many on it? Well, no. Okay. So what are you going to do about that then? We're going to bring in high net worth fundraising. Boards love that. It's always going to bring in high net worth fundraising, but we're in an area of serious deprivation. Where are the people who will be able to do it, and how are we going to reach them? Okay. And the fundraising techniques will work. We're going to bring in the high net worth program. Fine. Have you got the skills to do that? Have you got the capacity? Who's actually going to do this and make it work? Well, we haven't really got anyone. Well, then it's not going to work then, is it? So how do you know that? Have you got enough people with the right skills? You can bring in freelancers. You can employ new people. You can re-roll people. You can develop people. You can take your fundraising manager and get him or her partnered up with another organization that does have those skills. But you will not make it work if you haven't got them. So what are you going to do to get them? Plans and timetable are realistic. I sat in turnarounds and listened to the board lecturing me about their high net worth program or stuff like that. And I go, you're going to go bankrupt in 6 weeks. The high net worth program will take at least a year and you haven't got the skills. So are these realistic? Can you actually get those 20 bids in the next 6 months? Have you got the time and the deadlines? Can you do that? Yes or no? And the key risks. So this big risk over here, how are you going to mitigate that risk to keep it within acceptable limits? And just bunging 100,000 into the budget ain't doing that. So how are you going to manage the risks? And how will you identify emerging threats or opportunities? I do it all the time. You will get emails. You get my emails, NCVO, loads of people send emails out. There are lawyers, there are accountants, read the newspapers, watch Channel 4 News, get a news aggregator, but just make sure that you're kind of keeping up to speed what's happening. If it's local, you maybe just want to make sure that you've got a news aggregator for the local regional press or whatever, or that you know what the local council's up to. You see the stuff coming and your strategy is flexible enough to cope with change. You get these sort of Stalinistic 5-year strategies whereby, year 3, we will have raised £537,000. The world isn't like that. The world changes. So you need to be flexible about where you are. Can you change and veer and haul? Do you have fallback ideas? That may just be about having a conversation. You don't need to absolutely write a contingency plan. You do need to be prepared for when things change. If you can answer yes to all of those, you have a deliverable strategy. And those are the acid tests. So what you can do is if you log into Charity Excellence, score the income questionnaire, it will audit your fundraising for you. And it will answer many of these questions. And when you reach the strategy question in the download area, you will see there is a fundraising strategy toolkit. You download that, just follow it step by step. I've done it for everyone. If there are bits in there you don't need them, just ignore them. If there are bits you want, and I put extra toolkits in it, you just help yourself. And then you pull it all together, and at that point, you have a strategy. So strategy isn't about what you will do. It's about how well you respond to what the outside world will do to you. It does not have to be complicated. It's about quality and clarity of thinking. It's about using your internal skills and resources to respond to the outside world, looking for the opportunities and hope, staying flexible, making sure you're being realistic, monitoring and evaluating what you're doing so you know whether it's going to work or not, creating a compelling and emotionally engaging case for support. It may sound a bit technical. I work with you guys all the time. You are genuinely inspiring. You are uniquely placed to respond to your people and your constituency. You have great strength and great passion. This is all doable. I know it's hard, but working through this strategy will hopefully give you a pathway to become even more effective and do even greater good for your people. Thank you for everything you do to people. And I hope I've helped you. Cheers.